guys, Martina here, and today I'm gonna make this comic book sign. I've wanted to make something decorative for the wall behind me for a while now, and so I thought it could be kind of cool to try to make a comic book sign with our channel name on it. Okay, so let's get to work! The first thing I did was I printed out all the letters I needed for my sign, and I tried to make them almost as big as an A4 page. In my case, I needed 11 letters. I cut them all out with a scissor, and I'm gonna use these paper templates throughout the whole project, so it's important that I try to keep them intact until the end. Now I could grab my template and a piece of cardboard. I needed quite a lot of cardboard, so it's a good thing that I scavenged a lot of that from things like IKEA boxes a long time ago. Never know when you'll need it. So I drew around the letter with a marker first, and then I used a small utility knife to cut it out. There's the first letter, and now I only have 10 more to go. Here's all the letters in cardboard with their templates. I wanted the letters to look thick, and also I needed to make some space for the LEDs. I could achieve that by making strips of cardboard to add along the edges of all the letters. That's why I cut a lot of 4 cm wide strips of cardboard. I didn't continue until I had a ton of these. I tried to line the strip up perfectly with the letter, marked it up and cut the strip. I used masking tape to keep it in place temporarily, so I can make the whole outline before gluing it in place. Finally, it looked like this. Then I could take out my hot glue gun and glue all the corners and along the sides. The letters that have rounded edges are a bit more tricky because the cardboard has to be bent. I began by marking the starting point where it starts to bend. Then I used a ruler to push down every ½ centimeter or so in the direction I needed it to bend. Now it could fold perfectly around the edge. There we go, the cardboard letters are finished. I wanted to use as little LED strip as possible but still get bright lighting, so that's why I'm gonna add aluminium foil to the inside of the letters. I found it easier to mark up the letter using the template, cut it out and glue that on first, and then cut out strips for the sides afterwards. Before attaching the LED strips, I made it all a bit easier for myself by gluing all the letters to a background. I used some thick EVA foam to create it. I had to clean up the edges and make them straight, so I started cutting off these small pieces, but when I was finished I realized it didn't look very nice, so I cut off long strips from the sides instead. Which was what I should have done from the beginning. Then I could cut the whole piece in half. I thought the texture on this one side looked kinda cool and comic book-like, so I kept that as the front side. I lined them up like this and added the letters on top. I marked the center line as a reference with a pencil, as it's barely gonna be visible later. In addition, I used a paper piece as a reference for the distance between the bottom edge and the letter. I marked the line where the letter should be placed, and then I used hot glue to attach it to the foam. I did that 6 more times at the top, and then I used paper again as a spacer between them and the letters on the bottom. Then I glued on them as well. By the way, make sure to check out our Instagram account, where we post updates and behind-the-scenes content. At this point I quickly added 4 hooks to the back, as these have glue on them that has to dry for 24 hours. In the meantime I could deal with the electronics. First off, I grabbed the wire and soldered it to a power plug. Then I put on a shrink tube for protection. I poked a hole through one of the letters so that I could lead the wire through the back to the inside. Then I just stuck that power plug in place with some hot glue. Every time I connect a wire to an LED strip now, I add a shrink tube that I can pull over the connecting points. This is because I want to protect the soldering, and it's not a lot of extra work. When that's added, I could solder the wires to the cold white LED strip. I chose cold white because I think that won't alter any of the colors in the prints. I cut the strip to approximate length and then added a new wire to the other end that I could reach the next letter with. I could now tape the LED strip to the letter. I made another hole that I could push the wire through and then covered it with some black hot glue. Then I checked if it all worked. I did that in between each letter to make sure nothing went wrong. The wire couldn't just hang loose, so I led it from there to the next letter. The black hot glue came in really handy, as I could use that to cover up the red wires to make them less visible. I just added a hole on the other side and pushed the wire through. The same process went here: shrink tube, solder to the LED strip, add a new wire to the other end, and attach the LED strip to the letter. Poke another hole, lead the wire to the next letter, and it goes on. So the power plug's here. and the wire goes through here, and here, and here, and so on. I had to create a path for the current to go from the lower part of the sign to the upper part without being visible. As I made the background for this in EVA foam, it was easy to punch a hole through both that and the cardboard and then lead the wire through to the top. The wire goes right across here on the backside. I continued to do the same thing here, but as the letters are so close together at the top, I didn't need to show any wires at all. I could just use the nearest contact point between the letters to sneak some wires through. That's what it looked like when everything was wired up and working. It's time to cover everything up now. As I had 11 letters, I also needed 11 A4 sized prints of different comic book pages. Using pages from actual comic books won't work as they have prints on both sides, unless you want to make the sign without lights, of course. Now, I placed the different pages on a letter where I think it would fit the best. When I got the order right, I dealt with each letter in turn. I placed it on and taped on the template where I wanted it. When I had all of them, I cut around the edges and left at least 2 cm margin that I could wrap around the letter. Then I could go in with an X-Acto knife and add cuts in the corners and all the rounded edges of the letter. I had to attach it to each letter. Firstly, I folded the cuts I made around the edges. Secondly, I enhanced those folds before gluing it to the cardboard with hot glue. I just removed the template and repeated the process with the other letters. It looked nice already, but it needed one final touch: the edges. I used thin red cardboard, just cut out a ton of 4 cm strips and tried to do it as efficiently as possible. I tried to fit all the overlaps at the corners of the letters, but other than that I just glued those strips to all the sides. Now all I have to do is hang this thing on the wall. I think it turned out cool, even though it's a pretty simple project, but it's a great wall decoration and I think you can make lots of different designs using this technique. If you enjoyed this build, make sure to click the sub button so that I can see you in the next video. Thanks for watching!